Chapter 25. April Love. June 10th, 19 Yesterday evening, Andrew Oliver Murray asked Emily Bird Starr to marry him. The said Emily Bird Starr told him she wouldn't. I'm glad it's over. I felt it coming for some time. Every evening Andrew has been here, I felt that he was trying to bring the conversation around to some serious subject. But I have never felt quite equal to the interview, and always contrived to sidetrack him with frivolity. Yesterday evening, I went to the Land of Uprightness for one of the last rambles I shall have in it. I climbed the hill of firs and looked down over the fields of mist and silver in the moonlight. The shadows of the ferns and sweet wild grasses along the edge of the woods were like a dance of sprites. Away beyond the harbor, below the moonlight, was a sky of purple and amber where a sunset had been. But behind me was darkness, a darkness which, with its tang of fir balsam, was like a perfumed chamber where one might dream dreams and see visions. Always, when I go into the land of uprightness, I leave behind the realm of daylight and things known, and go into the realm of shadow and mystery and enchantment, where anything might happen, anything might come true. I can believe anything there. Old myths, legends, dryads, fauns, leprechauns. One of my wonder moments came to me. It seemed to me that I got out of my body and was free. I'm sure I heard an echo of that random word of the gods, and I wanted some unused language to express what I saw and felt. Enter Andrew, spick and span, prim and gentlemanly. Fauns, fairies, wonder moments, random words fled pell-mell. No new language was needed now. What a pity side whiskers went out with the last generation. They would suit him so, I said to myself, in good plain English. I knew Andrew had come to say something special. Otherwise, he would not have followed me into the land of uprightness, but have waited decorously in Aunt Ruth's parlor. I knew it had to come, and I made up my mind to get it over and have done with it. The expectant attitude of Aunt Ruth and the New Moon folks has been oppressive lately. I believe they all feel quite sure that the real reason I wouldn't go to New York was that I couldn't bear to part with Andrew. But I was not going to have Andrew propose to me by moonlight in the land of uprightness. I might have been bewitched into accepting him. So when he said, "It's nice here. Let's stay here for a while. After all, I think there's nothing so pretty as nature," I said, gently but firmly, that though nature must feel highly flattered, it was too damp for a person with a tendency to consumption, and I must go in. In we went. I sat down opposite Andrew and stared at a bit of Aunt Ruth's crochet yarn on the carpet. I shall remember the color and shape of that yarn to my dying day. Andrew talked, jerkily, about indifferent things, and then began throwing out hints. He would get his managership in 2 years more. He believed in people marrying young, and so on. He floundered badly. I suppose I could have made it easier for him, but I hardened my heart, remembering how he had kept away in those dreadful weeks of the John House scandal. At last, he blurted out, "Emily, let's get married as soon as I'm able to." He seemed to feel that he ought to say something more, but didn't know just what. So he repeated, just as soon as I'm able to," and stopped. I don't believe I even went through the motions of a blush. "Why should we get married?" I said. Andrew looked aghast. Evidently, this was not the Murray tradition of receiving a proposal. Why? Because I'd like it," he stammered. "I wouldn't," I said. Andrew stared at me for a few moments, trying to take in the amazing idea that he was being refused. "But why?" he asked, exactly in Aunt Ruth's tone and manner. "Because I don't love you," I said. Andrew did blush. I know he thought I was immodest. I think they'd all like it," he stammered. "I wouldn't," I said again. I said it in a tone even Andrew couldn't mistake. He was so surprised, I don't think he felt anything but surprise, not even disappointment. He didn't know what to do or say. A Murray couldn't coax. So he got up and went out without another word. I thought he banged the door, but afterwards I discovered it was only the wind. I wish he had banged the door. It would have saved my self-respect. It is mortifying to refuse a man and then discover that his main feeling is bewilderment. Next morning, Aunt Ruth, evidently suspecting something amiss from the brevity of Andrew's call, asked me point blank what had happened. There's nothing subtle about Aunt Ruth. I told her just as point blankly. "What fault have you to find with Andrew?" she asked icily. "No fault, but he tastes flat. He has all the virtues, but the pinch of salt was left out," I said, with my nose in the air. "I hope you don't go farther and fare worse," said Aunt Ruth ominously, meaning, as I knew, Stovepipe Town. I could have reassured Aunt Ruth on that point also, had I chosen. Last week, Perry came to tell me that he is going into Mr. Abel's office in Charlottetown to study law. It's a splendid chance for him. Mr. Abel heard his speech at the night of the inter-school debate, and has had his eye on him ever since, I understand. I congratulated him heartily. I really was delighted. "He'll give me enough to pay my board," said Perry, "and I guess I can rustle my clothes on some sideline. I've got to hoe my own row. Aunt Tom won't help me. You know why." "I'm sorry, Perry," I said, laughing a little. "Won't you, Emily?" he said. "I'd like this thing settled." "It is settled," I said. "I suppose I made an awful ass of myself about you," grumbled Perry. "You have," I said comfortingly, but still laughingly. Somehow, I've never been able to take Perry seriously any more than Andrew. I've always got the feeling that he just imagines he's in love with me. "You won't get a cleverer man than me in a hurry," warned Perry. "I'm going to climb high." "I'm sure you will," I said warmly, "and nobody will be more pleased than your friend Emily B." "Oh, friends," said Perry sulkily. "It's not for a friend I want you, but I've always heard it was no use to coax a Murray. Will you tell me one thing? It isn't my funeral, but are you going to marry Andrew Murray?" "It isn't your funeral, but I'm not," I said. "Well," said Perry as he went out, "if you ever change your mind, let me know. It will be all right, if I haven't changed mine." I have written the account of this exactly as it happened. But I have also written another account of it in my Jimmy book as it should have happened. I find I am beginning to overcome my old difficulty of getting my dream people to make love fluently. In my imaginary account, both Perry and I talked beautifully. I think Perry really felt a little worse than Andrew did, and I felt sorry about it. I do like Perry so much as a chum and friend. I hate to disappoint him, but I know he will soon get over it. So I'll be the only one left at Blairwater next year. I don't know how I'll feel about that. I dare say I'll feel a little flat by times. Perhaps at 3 of the night I'll wish I had gone with Miss Royal. But I'm going to settle down to hard, serious work. It's a long climb to the crest of the Alpine path. But I believe in myself, and there's always my world behind the curtain. New Moon, June 21st, 19 As soon as I arrived home tonight, I felt a decided atmosphere of disapproval, and realized that Aunt Elizabeth knew all about Andrew. She was angry, and Aunt Laura was sorry, but nobody has said anything. At twilight, I talked it over in the garden with Cousin Jimmy. Andrew, it seems, has been feeling quite badly since the numbness of shock wore off. His appetite has failed, and Aunt Addie indignantly wants to know if I expect to marry a prince or a millionaire, since her son is not good enough for me. Cousin Jimmy thinks I did perfectly right. Cousin Jimmy would think I had done perfectly right if I had murdered Andrew and buried him in the land of uprightness. It's very nice to have one friend like that, though too many wouldn't be good for you. June 22nd, 19 I don't know which is worse, to have someone you don't like ask you to marry him, or not have someone you do like. Both are rather unpleasant. I have decided that I only imagined certain things in the old John house. I'm afraid Aunt Ruth was right when she used to say my imagination needed a curb. This evening I loitered in the garden. In spite of the fact that it was June, it was cold and raw, and I felt a little lonely and discouraged and flat. Perhaps because 2 stories of which I had hoped a good deal came back to me today. Suddenly, I heard Teddy's signal whistle in the old orchard. Of course I went. It's always a case of, "Oh, whistle and I'll come to you, my lad," with me, though I would die before I would admit it to anyone but my journal. As soon as I saw his face, I knew he had some great news. He had. He held out a letter, Mr. Frederick Kent. I never can remember that Teddy's name is Frederick. He can never be anything but Teddy to me. He has won a scholarship at the School of Design in Montreal. $500 for 2 years. I was instantly as excited as he was, with a queer feeling behind the excitement, which was so compounded of fear and hope and expectancy that I couldn't tell which predominated. "How splendid for you, Teddy," I said, a little tremulously. "Oh, I'm so glad. But your mother, what does she think of it?" "She'll let me go, but she'll be very lonely and unhappy," said Teddy, growing very sober instantly. "I want her to come with me, but she won't leave the tansy patch. I hate to think of her living there all alone. I wish she didn't feel as she does about you, Emily. If she didn't, you could be such a comfort to her." I wondered if it occurred to Teddy that I might need a little comforting too. A queer silence fell between us. We walked along the Tomorrow Road. It has grown so beautiful that one wonders if any tomorrow can make it more beautiful. until we reached the fence of the pond pasture and stood there under the gray-green gloom of the firs. I felt suddenly very happy, and in those few minutes part of me planted a garden and laid out beautiful closets and bought a dozen solid silver teaspoons and arranged my attic and hemstitched a double damask tablecloth. And the other part of me just waited. Once I said it was a lovely evening. It wasn't. And a few minutes later I said it looked like rain. It didn't. But one had to say something. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to get everything possible out of those 2 years, Teddy said at last, staring at Blairwater, and at the sky, and at the sandhills, and at the green leisurely meadows, and at everything but me. Then, perhaps, when they're up, I'll manage to get to Paris, to go abroad, to see the masterpieces of great artists, to live in their atmosphere, to see the scenes their genius immortalized, all I've been hungry for all my life. And when I come back... Teddy stopped abruptly and turned to me. From the look in his eyes, I thought he was going to kiss me. I really did. I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't have shut my own eyes. And when I come back, he repeated, stopped again. Yes, I said. I don't deny to my journal that I said it a trifle expectantly. I'll make the name of Frederick Kent mean something in Canada, said Teddy. I opened my eyes. Teddy was looking at the dim gold of Blairwater and scowling. Again I had a feeling that night air was not good for me. I shivered, said a few polite commonplaces, and left him there, scowling. I wonder if he was too shy to kiss me, or just didn't want to. I could care tremendously for Teddy Kent if I let myself, if he wanted me to. It is evident he doesn't want me to. He is thinking of nothing but success and ambition and a career. He has forgotten our exchange of glances in the old John house. He has forgotten that he told me 3 years ago on George Horton's tombstone that I was the sweetest girl in the world. He will meet hundreds of wonderful girls out in the world. He will never think of me again. So be it. If Teddy doesn't want me, I won't want him. That is a Murray tradition. But then, I'm only half Murray. There is the star half to be considered. Luckily, I have a career and an ambition also to think about, and a jealous goddess to serve, as Mr. Carpenter once told me. I think she might not tolerate a divided allegiance. I am conscious of 3 sensations. On top, I am sternly composed and traditional. Underneath that, something that would hurt horribly if I let it is being kept down. And underneath that, again, is a queer feeling of relief that I still have my freedom.